It's still famous now, and it was written in 2012 in the New York Times. And it was written about Guy Fieri's American Kitchen and Bar in Times Square. Does anyone remember this review? Yeah? Okay, great. So he wrote the whole review in questions, which I thought was just brilliant. So I'm just going to read you a couple of paragraphs because it's so good. Guy Fieri, in all caps, have you eaten at your new restaurant in Times Square? Have you pulled up one of the 500 seats at Guy's American Kitchen and Bar and ordered a meal? Did you eat the food? Did it live up to your expectations? Did panic grip your soul as you stared into the whirling hypno wheel of the menu, where adjectives and nouns spin in a crazy vortex? When you saw the burger described as Guy Pat Lafreda's custom blend, all-natural Creekstone Farm Black Angus beef patty, LTOP, brackets, lettuce, tomato, onion, and pickle, end bracket, SMC super, I should say parentheses, SMC, parentheses, super melty cheese, end parentheses, and a slathering of donkey sauce on a garlic buttered brioche. Did your mind touch the void for a minute? Did you notice that the menu was an unreliable predictor of what actually came to the table? Were the bourbon butter crunch chips missing from your almond joy cocktail too? Was your deep fried boulder of ice cream the size of a standard scoop? So you can find it online if you want to laugh your head off. And then many media people think, why should I write about a place I'm telling people don't go there? People want to know where to eat, not where not to eat. And I don't really go for that, because if you're only telling people where to eat, then after a while somebody just has to look at the name of the restaurant and they'll know that you like it. They don't have to read what you have to say. So what's the point of that? So when I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in the 80s, San Francisco Weekly had a contest for a new restaurant reviewer. So I entered the contest, and they chose me as a finalist. They sent me to Boulevard, and I had an expense account. I remember that I ate foie gras for the first time, and it was the size of a baseball, and I wondered why it was so big, because it was the appetizer and not the entree. And I guess they liked my review because I won, and I became their main and only restaurant reviewer. So the newspaper wanted one review per week, and the editor told me that I should be edgy. I don't know about you, but I had no idea what that meant. So I decided that I was going to be bitchy, because I knew what that was. So this is still the days of print, so I started a file of bitchy writing, and then whenever it was time for me to write my review, I would get out the file, read a few pieces to get in the mood, and then rip into something. But that didn't mean that I trashed any restaurants. It just meant that that was my style. So in those days, who remembers Michael Bauer? He was the chief critic of the San Francisco Chronicle. And fine dining restaurants had a photo of him in their kitchen because he wore disguises, and because you're supposed to be anonymous. There's a whole thing going on Instagram right now. I'm a little off topic, but a lot of chefs are complaining about influencers. I'll get to that. And they think that influencers have no qualifications, and I'll get to that. And so they are not entitled to review restaurants. So anyway, Michael Bauer was white, male, cultured, and very self-assured. And during the heyday years of restaurant reviewing, that's who the restaurant reviewers were. They were always going to a fine dining restaurant because you were going to be taking your mother there for her birthday, or your spouse there for your wedding anniversary, and you're going to spend a lot of money, and you want to know, is this going to be worth it or not? And so that was their job. So, and it was always European or Western restaurants with white tablecloths, and the job had ethical quandaries as a result of that. Some reviewers settled scores, some took bribes, and some, as I mentioned, wore disguises. And then there's the issue of, well, how many times should you go? Most newspapers, you had to go 3 times, because maybe the first time was good, maybe the second time was bad, and you had to have a tiebreaker. But that costs a lot of money, especially if you were going to an expensive restaurant every time. I mean, as you know, there's some restaurants in San Francisco where it's $500 for dinner. So just imagine if you were going there 3 times. It's a lot of money for a restaurant to spend on you. So some of the male critics were gay because the women's pages or the food sections were full of women, and they were more friendly to gay men than, say, the sports section or the business section. So that was a way in for gay men who wanted to write. And the women were writing recipes, and the men were going out. So there were some exceptions. At the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times, there was Ruth Reichel, and she was very playful. She valued non-Western food. She tested the boundaries of storytelling. There's a very famous review of her going to the Cirque dressed as an old lady and how she was ignored. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Okay, good. And then there was Jonathan Gold at Los Angeles Weekly, who was really one of the first people to go to small family-run restaurants that had international food. It used to be called ethnic. That's considered politically incorrect now. Reasonable prices and international cuisine. That was a real breakthrough. He had a book called Counterintelligence. And has anyone seen the documentary about him called City of Gold? Yeah? Yeah, it's really excellent. I got to go to the opening of that movie in Los Angeles, and I just found him wandering the halls afterwards, and I got to talk with him for about an hour about how he did his job. So that was good, because when I wrote a book about food writing, and I was so terrified of talking to him that I left him out as someone I would interviewed. So then the internet came along in 1991, and food blogging started in earnest in 2005. And most food bloggers focused on recipes, and they still do that, but there's lots that also do restaurant recommendations. There's a woman in San Francisco, Table Hopper, Marcia Gagliardi, I think is her name. Does anybody follow Table Hopper? Okay, great. The problem is that they have to foot the bill because they don't have an expense account. So that gets kind of funny from an ethical standpoint. And I don't think Marcia, the Gagliardi, who's the head of Table Hopper, I don't think she pays her own way. I think the chefs all know her, and they treat her when she comes to their restaurant, and she goes to a lot of restaurant openings. And, you know, you have to be okay with that. But the problem is when you get a lot of comp meals that you end up being in this quandary where you have to be very positive, because just imagine if she started trashing restaurants, nobody would invite her anymore, and then what would happen to her whole business? So it's, you know, it's a bit of a fine line. And today there are influencers with huge social media followings who have taken to charging restaurants $2,000 to $5,000 for them to come to the restaurant and then video themselves there eating something to do a positive review on social media. So that's who a lot of these chefs are bashing right now on social media. I've seen so many posts from chefs complaining, but I think they're a little misguided because their main their main criticism is, have you worked in a restaurant kitchen? Have you traveled? Have you studied food? And all of us go to restaurants, and we have not worked in restaurant kitchens. And when I'm writing, I'm representing the consumer. I'm not representing another chef who's coming to the restaurant. So I don't agree that I need to have worked in a restaurant to be qualified to judge the food. So then crowdsourced apps like TripAdvisor, that started in 2000. Yelp started in 2004. Can you believe that, how old they are? I mean, that was 20-something years ago. And then everybody became a critic. So everybody could voice their opinion, and that probably was even more frustrating for chefs and restaurateurs because they didn't even have training as critics. And as a response to that, the big critics had to change who they reviewed, and they started reviewing the smaller restaurants also, and the hot new restaurants and the pop-ups, and that's all been integrated now into restaurant reviewing, and the role of the big powerful critic who can make or break a restaurant has become more dispersed. So another trend that happened recently is that a lot of critics decided that this whole nonsense where they had to wear disguises, they just didn't want to do it anymore. So they just said they're going to stop because they thought it was a charade. A lot of times they would go to a restaurant and use a different name, but the restaurant would figure out who they were. And I mean, you don't draw attention to yourself. You don't ask for anything special. You're just there to be a customer like everybody else. But they're on the lookout for these people, and they can figure out who you are. So they just decided that they're not going to do it. And now with social media, everybody's mugshot is online, and all they have to do is Google you, and they can see who you are if you're just starting a job. So today's critics are younger, and they're more diverse. For the Chronicle, we have Cesar Hernandez and Mackenzie Fagan, who's Asian American, and Soleil, who is Vietnamese American before her. And they also don't have to stay in their lane. Like, they can review an Ethiopian restaurant. The Hispanic guy doesn't have to go to the Hispanic restaurants, and the Asian person doesn't have to go to only Asian restaurants. So their writing can be really delightful. And I'm going to give you a paragraph from Tejal Rao, who writes for the New York Times, and she just became one of their new restaurant critics, where they did not replace an older white guy with another critic. She's in LA, she's not even in New York, and she and Melissa Clark, who's in New York, and another woman are all sharing the job of a critic, which is another new thing where it's not one person who has to travel all over the United States all the time and eat several meals a week. So this is from Tejal writing about the disappearing Las Vegas buffets. Distracted by the crowds, the warm lights of the carving station, and a large mermaid made of fondant that looked a lot like Jennifer Aniston, I'd slipped into a kind of culinary fugue state. Back at the table, I was confused by my choices, but there was no denying that some part of me, revealed by the emotional mechanism of this extravagant buffet, had made them. The buffet always shows you who you are. So that's quite different from the old days, where it was just about, are you going to get your money's worth when you take your mother out? So today, we've changed too. We now eat out 4 to 6 times per week, if you count restaurants, takeout food, and delivery. And the reason to read a review has stayed the same, which is risk reduction. That's the primary reason to read a review, because we're all busy, we just want to know where to go. And Google has replaced Yelp as the most trusted review platform by a wide margin. Does this sound right to you? When you're looking for a restaurant, you go on Google? Okay. So you too can play restaurant reviewer if you go to a restaurant, if you like to write up reviews. I'm going to give you a few tips. And you can only do the fun part, not the part where you have to sweat over an article. So here are my 5 tips on how to act like a professional restaurant reviewer. Number 1, educate yourself on the type of cuisine before you go. If you've never been to an Ecuadorian restaurant, look up Ecuadorian food. Look at the menu before you go. Number 2, don't order the same thing if you go back. You should be experimenting all the time. Number 3, order something simple and something strange. Number 4, taste everyone else's food at the table. And number 5, don't worry about authenticity because there's no such thing. Okay, that's it for me. Now maybe you'll have some questions.
That was great.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, Stephanie has a question, so come on, Stephanie. Let's stand up. You can stand up.
Thank you for this, Diane. I read one of Ruth Reichel's books, Comfort Me with Apples.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in the very first chapter, her first review, her credit card didn't have a big enough limit to cover the cost of the meal that the magazine paid her for.
Oh, my God.
Has anything like that ever happened to you? Or this is probably from the 70s, her first review.
No, I did it in the 80s and 90s, and I had to pay for everything up front, which, you have to go to a restaurant a couple times a week, and you have to go more than once. So I would have this huge bill at the end of the month that was due, and then I could send them an invoice, but you know how it is. It takes them 30 days to pay, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I had to be careful. But I still could pay my credit card bill.
Hey, thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
One question for you. Over the last 10 years, what is your best meal and where was the restaurant?
Oh, okay. I've been going to a new restaurant in San Leandro. I moved to San Leandro 4 years ago, and this place has only been open this year, and it's called Lavanda. Has anyone been to Lavanda? Going there tomorrow, and CJ booked it because I told her about it. Okay, excellent. It's not inexpensive, but I guess what I decided about it is these days it's $25 to have a sandwich and a Coke. Yeah. Yes? Yeah. So, if you're going to go to a fine dining restaurant and you shouldn't be getting too upset if it's $70 maybe for a nice meal. And it's a Greek restaurant. It's beautiful inside. It's family run. The mom is the genius behind the food, and the dad is a waiter, and the son is a waiter. And it's really excellent. They apparently lived in Turkey before they came here, and her son talked to me about eating hedgehog, which he liked.
Don't knock it till you try it. That's what I always say about the hedgehog.
Yeah, it's not on the menu, don't worry. I haven't gone yet, but they've started having brunch on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But they have a huge menu. Everything is made fresh. They make their own infused olive oils. The plates of food are beautiful. Everything I've had there is fantastic. I think it has a 4.9 rating on Google. Ooh. Speaking of Google. So
Lavanda with a V?
Lavanda, yes, with a V.
Okay. Ruth Stroop.
Hi, Diane. I've been following food for years and trained 1,000 years ago at Culinary Institute in New York. My question is really about the state of print media, because, I grew up with a dad who read newsletters, and we got all kinds of stuff, and then it was in the newspapers, and yeah. Is the restaurant, I feel like restaurant writing, food writing and sports is really all that's left in local news. And I was wondering if you had any comments sort of about the state of print writing about food.
Yes. I had lunch with my financial advisor recently, very good meal, and he was paying. He asked me if I wanted to invest in any private equity companies. This is where you say boo hiss, because they have been buying up newspapers and radio stations and TV stations and laying off the staff and taking all the money out and bankrupting them. So if you wonder why you're watching the 6 o'clock news and somebody has put on an Instagram video that they saw about a funny dog, I mean, they don't have any budget. And it's happening to print media, it's happening to, there's a lot of consolidation also in print media. But the New York Times is still making money. The Washington Post, you heard about Jeff Bezos, same thing, laid a lot of people off, cut a lot of budgets. And they're still supposed to be doing Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalism, long-form stories, breaking news, and their job has gotten a lot more difficult. I interviewed the head of New York Times Cooking recently, Emily Weinstein, and they have maybe 28,000 recipes on New York Times Cooking, and so many people just go to New York Times Cooking every day if they're to figure out what they're going to cook. And that's been a huge moneymaker for them. That was a really brilliant idea, because that's not really about newspapers. But newspapers always had recipes, so at least they're still in the same model. It is a really serious problem. And people don't trust media
Dana, I'm getting
either.
there.
Yeah.
Allison, I got you, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your talk. Actually, very interesting to me, even though I am like the antichrist for restaurant reviewers, because I am a vegan. Nobody ever writes about good vegan food, and I have a very restricted diet, and so I never would even think to read a review about vegan food.
Right.
But what you've reported to us, it sounds like really good writing, so I might actually try that. But what I wanted to find out is that there was some show I ran across on streaming that was about restaurants vying for the top, what is that restaurant award that everybody
The
wants?
Michelin star?
Yeah, Michelin.
The
It
bear?
was really interesting, and I'm like a non-foodie, but I liked that. It was from the restaurant owner's point of view and
Yeah.
all the struggle they had.
It was the bear, right?
What was it?
The bear?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no.
No.
It was a different one.
Oh.
It was a competition. But
Oh.
anyway, I just wondered if you knew about that. It's really interesting. All right, thank you.
What are you asking? The name of the show? Because I don't know what.
No,
does
she's
anybody
saying
know?
she wants to become a writer too and write for vegan restaurant reviews only, which I think sounds amazing. Dana Sack, hit us.
I still cook out of Craig Claiborne's cookbook
Okay.
from the New York Times.
Hardcore.
How do you choose what restaurants to review? And can we give you names of restaurants we'd like you to give a chance to?
I'm not reviewing anymore. I have a food writing newsletter that's international, so I can't do any local reviewing in it. But you can send, if there are food reviewers that you follow, restaurant reviewers that you follow, you can send them your tips. And a lot of reviewers depend on, they have to be at the forefront of which pop-up is really hot, and that patisserie in the Ferry Building where there's a 3-hour line. Chronicle just awarded that one the best pastry restaurant, bakery in San Francisco. Has anyone had a pastry from that patisserie?
3 hours for a donut.
Yes, me too. I mean, yeah, I went there. I just couldn't face the line. I thought, how much better can it be? But apparently, quite a bit better. Because there was just a story about him. the chef, and he said, you must eat the croissant within 2 hours. Yeah, so yeah,
have
send
a-
tips.
Your comment early on in your talk about eating at home all the time and then you transitioned to a new career. How did you handle that personally?
It was really hard for me when I first started. I remember going into a Hungarian restaurant and I had no idea what Hungarian food was. But then because I was a journalist, so the way I've dealt with it is I've had a very long career, and not all of it has been in food. I started with full-time in food forever in the 90s, but I was the editor of a computer magazine, I was the editor of a business magazine, I was the editor of an international four-wheel drive magazine by mistake. So, journalists can, I knew how to run a magazine, how to assign stories, so I just did that. And then in the 90s, I thought, okay, that's enough of that. Now, if I could write about any subject, what would it be? And it was food, because I was raised in a very unusual family where there was hardly anyone else like us, and the way that my parents identified themselves was through their food. They were Iraqi Jews from China. And so I grew up eating Bombay, Baghdadi Jewish food, Iraqi food, Shanghainese food, and Japanese food. And every once in a while, my mother tried to make a Western dish, and she was really bad at that. But their whole identity was, the only way they could identify themselves was by cooking. And then they would know who they were and what their lineage was, because their family came from Iraq to India to Shanghai.
We have time for one more question?
Yep.
So when you were writing
done?
restaurant reviews, did you wear disguises? And if so, how did you organize that? And are you wearing one today?
Tricky.
Yes, I'm really a man, and I'm a lot shorter. No, because it was San Francisco Weekly, and I did write for the Chronicle a little bit, but I stopped doing that because the only job they would give me is I was banished to Contra Costa County to go to a restaurant and see if it was any good, and then if it was any good, then Michael Bauer would swoop in and write the real review. So I didn't want to do that. So no, nobody knew who I was. Because I wasn't Michael Bauer, and that's the only person they cared about. So.
Everybody, don't get excited. I think we have one more question, because we do have a minute, and if we can answer this one quickly. Joe was so curious.
Now I'm a little afraid I might get an edgy response. I was just curious what your thoughts are on the Oakland foodie scene.
Oh, the Oakland food scene is fantastic. Especially the bakery scene is red hot, and all the bakeries with that are mixing Asian ingredients with French technique, like Bake Some. Bake Some was like the top bakery in Oakland, in the Bay Area, according to the Chronicle. So many pop-ups, so much fine dining now. In categories that never used to be fine dining, like Salvadorian food. Pupusa, is that the name of that? Yeah. It's a fantastic scene, I think. And also, expanding out to Richmond and even San Leandro now. What'd you say? El Sobrante. Yeah, we have a restaurateur here from from El Sobrante. Yeah. Tell us the name of your restaurant. Okay. It gets great. Good. Okay, there's people here who review it. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, everybody.
I have one last question. Who and what determines whether or not a restaurant is a Michelin restaurant?
wondering who gets a Michelin star? Is that your question?
determines?
Who determines it? It's a big organization. It's a worldwide organization, and it's very secretive, and they have these people who supposedly are anonymous who go to restaurants, and they have to fill out a lot of paperwork about their views, and it's very prestigious to have a Michelin star. And there's a lot more restaurants now in Oakland. I think the hottest restaurant in Oakland has been Burdel's, right? It was named by Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. And I think, does it have a Michelin star? I can't remember. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, every year. And they have the Bib Awards now, which are not as high end.
So, we're not finished yet. We're not through yet.
I'm coming back up there.
So I'd like to present to you just a token of our appreciation for you making the speech to us.
Oh, that's
This is
beautiful.
a book with our district. This is the book that was written for our district, and it was also written by one of Oakland 3's club members.
Oh.
And it is signed and autographed inside.
Nice, thank you.
So-
And it has food on the cover.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements that we might have missed? Any other announcements? I do know you need to put on your thinking cap about whether or not you want to bowl or play golf. There is a bowling group that's going to be getting together. Dudley is putting that together, and Dudley is also putting together another golfing outing. He's not here this week, and he won't be here next week, but I will have more information for you next week as to how you might want to get involved in either bowling or in playing golf. So, having said all of that, I'd like to introduce myself to tell you who the speaker is next week. Next week, our speaker will be Gita, who is our district governor. Gita will be coming here at 11 o'clock to talk to our two boards and to our committee members and committee chair people. After that, we will have our meeting, which will start at 12:15. Gita will be our speaker for that day. And then after the speaker, we will leave here not later than 1:15. I think I mentioned earlier, there's an event going here, so we all have to be out of the parking lot not later than 1:30. So, having said all of that, this meeting is adjourned.